Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. Bakari Lumumba back once again, the progenitor of LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. Back once again with another video, bringing in the new year. But before we do that, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button and feel free to share. Back with another video where we're going to be discussing New Year's resolutions for the global African community. So just have about 5 that we're going to run down and discuss, but I think this is very important. We know every new year people want to talk about what they're going to do different. They're going to go to the gym, they're going to engage in this or divest in this. But we want to make sure that more than anything, we invest in ourselves. And I want to talk about some ways that we could do that. Number one, I believe that always betting on Black needs to be more than just a slogan. It needs to be intentional, it needs to be purposeful. And in doing that, we should be adopting the philosophy in life of being intentional about our Blackness. We know, unfortunately, oftentimes Black people, we're almost circumstantial in our Blackness. We know that the Harvard implicit bias test argues and teaches us that what most Black people, particularly here in the death and decadence of the Western diaspora, have a pro-white, anti-Black disposition. That it leads us to engage in oftentimes in racially disempowering, self-defeating, and of course, self-destructive behavior. We want to put that type of foolishness to bed in 2021, and usher into a new year, and all new everything, all Black everything, in which we are purposeful about our Blackness and focusing on empowerment in a multitude of different ways. And in doing that and being intentional about our Blackness, I think we have to move from simply being protest-minded to making sure we're focused on building institutions to create a buffer between ourselves and the dominant society that seeks to do us harm in the manner in which they seek to make anti-Black racism omnipresent. That's number one. We have to focus on building institutions. And one of the ways we could do that is making sure that we support institutions or build institutions that are going to be rooted in our own best interests. We know that there are a number of institutions in our communities that oftentimes are maybe run by Black people who are Black in skin, but not Black in mind, and actually do harm. We have a whole nother video about that coming later. Number two, I think we need to be unapologetically African. And what I mean by that is, there are oftentimes, unfortunately, for the past couple of years where we've allowed people to engage in the nonsensical terms like foundational Black Americans or American descendants of slaves. These terms to me are nonsensical because we understand that under the system of global racism and white supremacy, the reality is what? We're all one Negro. It doesn't matter where we landed here in the Western Hemisphere, the reality situation is we're all facing anti-Black racism, just in a more different and nuanced form. I can recall that I was on a podcast and a young lady stated, well, they treat African and Caribbean immigrants different from African Americans. And I said, this is true, but the same is true when African Americans travel to Europe, particularly Paris, and you hear Black people saying, oh my God, I never felt like a human being before. But if you do like Sugar Ray Robinson did, and once the fair and fair goes down, and you start to ask questions about how African immigrants are being treated, or how the descendants of colonialism in French Francophone West Africa are being treated, they tell you, get your monkey, you know what, out of here. We never liked you in the first place. So we have to understand that, of course, anti-Black racism is global. Number two, we know we're still facing police genocide. We know that there's been some breakthroughs in terms of officers who have shot or killed unarmed African Americans being charged and convicted. But we know that that's not the justice we want. We want to be in a position to prevent this from even happening, right? And so I think, but if it does happen, one of the ways that we can guarantee that an individual is convicted is we have to put to bed this idea of we don't want to serve on a jury. I think it's very important that we understand that, unfortunately, Black people here in the United States of America, unfortunately, we populate the majority of individuals who are in jail, in the prison, or on probation or parole, right? And so as a result, we know that some of these issues that we're facing in terms of brothers and sisters being incarcerated or in part of the criminal justice system, and the carceral state is rooted in what? That these issues are systemic, right? At one point it was 1 in 6, then it became 1 in 5, then it became 1 in 4, and now it's 1 in 3. So we know when it becomes 1 in 3, it's not just Willie and Daryl that are doing things and getting in trouble. This is a systemic issue in which we can argue that we are being targeted. And I think it's very important that we understand that. But one of the ways we can combat this is by serving on jury. And in order to serve on a jury, you have to be a registered voter. I'm not an individual who believes that voting is the panacea, but I do believe that it could be a weapon used in our interest. And so we have to understand that when we register to vote, it's not just for the those midterm elections or even every 4 years for those presidential elections. We want to be registered to vote so that we are called on jury duty and we serve on a jury. And as a brother or sister who is there on what we could call fallacious charges, we can make sure that we are the dissenting vote in that jury room. Number 4, wealth accumulation, right? We know Marcus Garvey, the Honorable Mr. Marcus Messiah Garvey, the greatest Pan-Africanist of the modern era and the greatest economic nationalists that black people have ever known, believe that in order to gain power, we had to build wealth. And we can all, I think, can understand and agree that black people, we have been at war with various entities since 1492 when Columbus so-called sailed the ocean blue. And as a result, in order to go to war and fight in a effective manner, an efficacious manner, you have to have what? A large war chest. And so to do that, that means we need to focus on what? Focusing on entrepreneurship, building wealth, not so that we could go to Miami or other places like the Cayman Islands and turn up, but to make sure that we are building wealth so that not only we could create opportunities for our people and build institutions, but also if the time comes and it's necessary, that we can fight by any means necessary. And last but not least, I think what is most important and that we want to bring in 2022 and leave this behind in 2021 is we want to be self-determining on all areas of human activity. And I think this is important. When I was part of the organization that I co-created, the CAU, the Coalition of African Unity, one of the things we believed in was being self-determining in all areas of life. We know that for some of our people, we might be self-determining in terms of learning our history, heritage, and our culture. But cultural nationalism isn't enough. Some of us may be self-determining in terms of building financial wealth, but we might have a white mindset and believe in order to be successful financially, we have to think and act like white people and play the cultural children of the world. We don't believe in that as well. Or we might say, hey, I want to get involved in politics, where we don't end our dalliance with the two-party system and think in terms of what is best in the best interest of ourselves as what black people and in the interest of the black collective. And so I want to promote being self-determining in all areas of life. Relationships, politics, economics, academics, personal life, professional life, etc. And if we do that, I think we could be on our road to restoring ourselves to our traditional greatness. So once again, that's all I have. New year, new everything. These are my New Year's resolutions for what? The global African community. Make sure you hit the subscribe and like button, share with your well-wishers and friends. Till next time, peace.